good Sonic story? They have those? Sonic games were originally never too focused on the story. Such was the way of the video game world back in the time of Sonic's creation. Complex animation and scripting wasn't common or even as possible on the earlier systems like it is today. The most you would usually get was a two-pose sprite moving in one direction. You might even get a sudden change in direction sometimes. Fancy, I know. But Sonic, always being one to test the boundaries, showed signs of characters interacting beyond charging head forward into their doom early on. The jump into the third dimension brought us not a rough transition into 3D like you might be expecting me to say, but a paradigm shift for storytelling in games. Seeing Bowser menacingly stomp towards the player, or watching Crash assault my eyes with his orange crotch dances, these things could have never been done before polygonal graphics and programmable virtual cameras. Adventure is where Sonic Team added dimensions to the game, as well as to the story. We went from Sonic stopping an evil genius's plans to turn woodland critters into robots, to more numerous conflicts of grappling with gods, grappling with autonomy, grappling with the loss of dependability, and grappling with whatever Big has going on over there. The production value of these stories continue to get increases in scale, but the million-dollar question is, did the content of the narrative grow as well? And that's a tricky one. It mostly depends on who you ask. If I were to take a survey of all of you and ask what Sonic story is the best, it would undoubtedly be all over the place. Some of you probably absorb these corny plots like dates and times from a textbook, I swear. I might even have a couple of you memeing on me and tell me that 06 has a good story with terrible execution, or if it had more time to develop, the story would have been amazing. It does not, and it would not. Please reconsider your life choices that led up to this decision. But again, to my point, everyone has a favorite story when it comes to Sonic, and my search for the best will be determined by which story comes the closest to being a lighthearted adventure, with the action being taken serious enough for the audience to understand the stakes of the conflict at hand. I don't want anything too serious or overly dramatic, and I also don't want something that makes me feel like I need to go find my pacifier and sippy cup to enjoy it proper. There has to be a good balance for the tone and a consistently on-model behavior for Sonic and his friends. So let's try and hit all the major releases as of this recording, and any others I feel like might be worthy of a gloss over. This is my search for the Sonic series' best story. A simpler time. Not much had been established at this point, besides Sonic being the good guy and Eggman being the bad guy. But this changed when the two sequels, Sonic 2 and Sonic CD, came about. It's not much, but this began introducing us to more characters and threats in Sonic's world. Tails became a brother-like sidekick for Sonic, Amy was a damsel in distress, and Metal Sonic was an intimidating threat that showed us how much trouble Eggman could be when he put his mind to it. Then, after the separated releases, when Sonic 3 and Knuckles finally came out, there was much more focus on the story. This new guy, Knuckles, was the guardian of these powerful emeralds, and with him, an ancient civilization was introduced to the canon. Eggman tricks Knuckles into thinking Sonic wants to steal these emeralds for himself. Meanwhile, Eggman obviously has nefarious plans for using them. It may not seem like much, but there were these little interactions during and in between some stages that were still pretty rare at this point in gaming. Seeing Sonic and Knuckles fight and then have Knuckles realize Sonic isn't the enemy and help him was wild back in the day. This Genesis era was just the beginning, however, and like I mentioned a moment ago, the third dimension brought many changes to the game as well as how our characters interact. Sonic Adventure's plot is alright. I myself might have a great deal of nostalgia for the game in its entirety, but that can't stop me from seeing its shortcomings. But man, it comes out swinging. Our hero is jumping around the rooftops of a city after dark and then ends up chasing a fleet of police cars, which leads him to confronting a god made of water. It's a very different setting than what we're used to, but I think it works overall. We're slowly introduced to the characters new and old while the stakes rise and rise after each of their 6 campaigns. And the aforementioned main threat is the so-called God of Destruction, Chaos. Eggman plans on using this monster to destroy Station Square so he can build his own empire known as Eggman Land. After each Chaos Emerald absorbed, he becomes more and more powerful, so it's up to Sonic and kinda his friends, only sometimes though, to stop the monster. It's serviceable enough to be entertaining, but it's just filled with a lot of unnecessary stuff. It wouldn't be inaccurate to call maybe half of the game irrelevant to the Chaos plotline. Knuckles has a stake as far as repairing the Master Emerald and fixing his home, but knows very little about his culture's history, and that could have made Knuckles' significance a lot deeper. Tails really doesn't serve much of a purpose here other than stopping Eggman's Plan B. Amy befriends a bird. Gamma has a very interesting story of learning free will, hunting down and destroying his brothers, and ultimately sacrificing himself to reunite a family. As interesting as it is, none of that serves the Chaos plot overall. And Big has a frog that has a tail that Chaos needs, so he fishes inside of him to get it back. Big was a mistake. Except for giving us this line.
Behold! It's a tailed frog! Very unique.
Tikal is really cool as a concept, but I think she's kinda wasted. The spirit of the ancient Echidna tribe's heiress sealed herself away with Chaos inside the Master Emerald. So she goes around the game trying to get help from the characters to put everything back together, but again, so many of the characters have no interest in this. It should have been Knuckles that has the link to Tikal, and he has to help Sonic beat Chaos by relaying information while Tails and Amy run support. And Gamma can have his story off in the corner while Big does a backflip off of I don't care, I just don't want him in this game. I think Sonic Adventure's conclusion and setup is great, but it takes far too many detours in getting there to be considered the best.
I hate Eggman.
Sonic Adventure 2 fixes the problem of unnecessary characters, but makes the conflict a little more all over the place. The game is split between 2 story campaigns instead of 6, so that's far more organized in the way you experience it, but it's got many more twists and turns. Not even ones that are difficult to follow, just... Okay, so full cards on the table, I'm not a huge fan of Adventure 2. Now, before you start shooting your pretend Kamehamehas at me, I do think it's a good game, but it's not even close to being in my top 5 Sonic games. I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that I played it to the point of exhaustion as a kid, and I was just joining the online Sonic community around the time when opinions on this game started to fall towards the more negative side. Again, I love some parts of Sonic Adventure 2, but there's just a lot that keeps it on the shelf for me. While it might have been one of the most memorable opening stages in the franchise, what comes immediately after that made a young Ross incredibly bored, and it makes an adult Ross want to go back to the first adventure title as soon as possible. This game loves to jump around. Shadow's introduction happens, then we cut to Knuckles, some Bat, and Eggman arguing in the desert, leading to another smashing of the Master Emerald.
This is the first time in my life that I've been provoked to hit a woman.
Then Tails rescues Amy, who's about to be shot by Eggman or something. Eggman blows up the moon? Knuckles is literally running around in the sewer just to be looking for some emerald pieces. Tails hijacked the president. He hijacks the president's limousine. They go to space. Sonic dies, lol, psych. They stop the big space gun, and that's less than half of the plot. I'm obviously skimming over a lot of little interactions, but it's just because I'm pretty numb from how many times I've played through this story. But Shadow, Gerald Robotnik, and the Ark are also just uninteresting to me at this point. I genuinely enjoy how Sonic behaves in this game. When I was in elementary school, I used to say that Sonic was my favorite superhero. And that mainly stems from how much of a confident hard-ass his lines in this game make him out to be. And when paired with a dark doppelganger like this dork, I ate that shit up like Kix cereal. But nowadays, it comes off as a little too cheesy. The game looks leaps and bounds better than Adventure 1, but that doesn't mean anything for the worst sound mixing in the entire series. You can fix some of these issues with mods and such, but even then, the entire package is just so talked about and discussed that it's lost all impact it possibly could have on me.
Will you marry me?
No way!
I thought I had you this time.
Thankfully, I don't think I ever obsessed with any Sonic game quite like I did with Adventure 2, so the burnout was never quite as intense. And intensity was lowered all across the board with this next one, Sonic Heroes. This one sees teams of 3 characters going on their own journeys for differing reasons, culminating in one final story that more or less ties them all together. Sonic's group just gets challenged by Dr. Eggman to stop him before taking over the world, thus it has a pretty classic era vibe the entire run-through. Amy, Cream, and Purple Hagrid are looking for the frog again, and a Chow, who have been supposedly kidnapped by Sonic. Yeah, because any other time you mistake someone with quills as Sonic, you've been right.
This fraud!
Team Chaotix, realizing the second chance they've been given, decide to keep it relatively safe and just take a new job from a mysterious client through their detective agency. Finally, Rouge recruits a robot created by Eggman who actually hates him, and Shadow the Hedgehog. This is surprising because it was implied that he fell to his death after the final battle in the previous game. But now, the goal is to find out his past and how he survived. No real revelations are made until the end of each team's respective story, but that's okay. The team's bantering and interactions keep it all relatively close to the ground for most of the campaigns. There are interactions that happen when a select few pair of teams meet and begin hitting each other for arbitrary reasons, but I don't think these really serve as anything but fan service. Especially this part.
Who's this fraud?
Amy finds the frog in Chow, Rouge finds a room full of Shadow clones that leaves us with a cliffhanger in a Sonic game. Sonic destroys Eggman's fleet, and the Chaotix realize that their client is Eggman, and that the real villain of every team's story has been Metal Sonic playing the part of Eggman. He was doing this so he could gather battle data from each team's members and defeat Sonic once and for all, but everyone pulls together and defeats Metal Sonic and saves the day. And by everyone pulls together, I mean they all pull out their Chaos Emeralds and give them to Sonic to smack Metal and send him packing. I've always liked this story. It's simple, but it never really tries to be anything more until the climax, and that might be a problem for a movie, but I think a Sonic the Hedgehog game can get away with it. There are some unnecessary elements, sure. Again, the character battles don't do much besides giving Sonic and Shadow a chance to throw one-liners at each other and have Shadow make this weird pose, but they are all less than 2 minutes long, so I think it's harmless. Of course, the game itself is made a little repetitive by making you play the same stage 4 different times to get to the finale, but the story, in isolation, is short and sweet. Throughout the journey to the final encounter, all teams are running into these fake Eggman robots, so you're never not wondering what's going on. It's more of a mystery than anything. Thus, I think it did a good job of keeping the audience captivated the whole time on the way up that ladder. And while again, the game itself can be on the repetitive side, the story is one that I remember fondly.
Oh yeah, baby, this makes us a team.
Do I even need to tell you why this one is terrible? Shadow the Hedgehog is a conundrum of a game all on its own. There are so many baffling decisions it makes, but since I don't want to keep you here forever, I'll only complain about the narrative structure and how dumb it is. The game features a branching story that streaks off depending on what requirements you fulfill at the end of every mission. There are dark, hero, and neutral objectives to choose from as you play through 10 stages, and then a final boss of your ending. I'm sure you can imagine the terrible inconsistencies this leads to, and I mean, if I could muster up one backhanded compliment, it would be that some of these outcomes make me laugh. There are a number of these outcomes that I find to be in the so bad it's good territory, but that's just the content. The structure is what is consistently horrendous. Not a single one of the outcomes you play towards for most of the game matters at all in the grand scheme of things. None of these endings follow up in a satisfying way to Team Dark's cliffhanger ending in Sonic Heroes. And no ending makes a satisfying lead-in for the true final story of this game. Nothing you do in Shadow the Hedgehog has anything to do with the continuity of the series until the last 30 minutes you have the controller in your hand. So you could essentially play the intro cutscene, cut out the entirety of the game you just played, and then immediately jump into the final mission and be right back on track with the amount of information required. And as far as the following games play out, you wouldn't even need to do that, seeing as how nothing ever follows up on these events in future titles. The amount of information given is so minuscule that it's laughable. You basically find out that Shadow is a good guy. He wants to save his friends when they're in trouble. I know, it's crazy. The revelation that was already told to us in Adventure 2 needed a whole game dedicated to it, featuring a cartoon character using no-nonsense, realistic firearms. Shadow has no compelling story to tell, and similar to the game, this section of the video was just to get you all riled up for the next one. I should never have been created. This is who I am.
Hey, don't go there! Yet, things may not be what they seem.
I have encountered a lot of criticism towards the story, which when you look closely, actually doesn't hold up. It is said to be full of loopholes. I have only found one to this date. The story is unique in that it is the only story featuring the Chaos Emeralds where the game isn't about linearly collecting them. Silver is the other amazing character I am going to talk about. The Kiss the Most Hated scene in Sonic 6 deserves its own section dedicated to it. First of all, is Amy's reaction. She completely accepted Elise kissing the love of her life and made no fuss whatsoever making her out of character.
Sonic 06's story is horrible. There is so much to go over that I go numb at the thought of even an attempt. So instead of making me go over and state the painfully obvious, Let's just hit some key bullet points, shall we, my dear viewer? The presentation. I won't give an Xbox 360 and PS3 launch title much flack for being a little rough around the edges, but some of this comes down to the animation and rigging teams. Most of the characters really do look like they're moving around using raw mocap data, even in some of the pre-rendered cutscenes. Not everything looks terrible, but if it's not that, then it looks out of place for a Sonic game altogether. Some perks of the unfinished presentation have given us Knuckles ragdolling in this cutscene, Sonic preparing to run through a cliff right here, the obvious mocap animation makes it look like every character is a mascot in a suit at a theme park, and Shadow staring at Rouge's tits. Once again, pointless and tertiary characters. Besides the 3 main hogs and a select few side characters, not much is accomplished by anyone whose name doesn't start with an S. Tails comes along for moral support, Blaze comes along so she can die, and Rouge comes along so we can satiate that part of the fanbase. I guess. I would be grateful that there's no Big the Cat, but we have something much worse. Princess Elise is the most useless character in the franchise. Her dialogue is awkward, and she is a terrible excuse for a strong female lead. The plot holes. Good lord, this is the one that makes me laugh when people try to defend this game. There are so many times when this game contradicts something in the franchise, or more often, itself. The Blue Emerald being in a different place depending on the story, all of the time paradoxes, God, it's a headache. I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but if for some reason you haven't seen Some Call Me Johnny's Sonic 06 plot synopsis, that card up top can enlighten you. He goes over everything in far greater detail than I have any interest in doing.
Sonic dies!
It really is just a huge mess, with how many times Elise gets kidnapped, the dialogue and acting from our main cast is cringeworthy sometimes, and the entire game gets erased from canon by the end, so none of it really even mattered! And of course, there's the big one that people love to throw at the fanbase every chance they get. Hey! I've already told you we don't do that here. Go on, get! I had even forgotten about one of the best attributes of this game up until revisiting it for this video. A good amount of the cinematics fall under that so bad it's good umbrella on occasion. Thus, its cutscenes have become a guilty pleasure of mine to go back through.
I see it!
And I unironically find Snapcube's real-time fan dub to be a great way to experience the terrible story of 06, without the need to go back through it.
That just makes you a beta cuck. That's the difference between you and I, Silver the Hedgehog. I'm a alpha gamer.
But entertaining for the wrong reasons or not, 06's story is too generally stupid to revisit for the hell of it. After this game is when things started to get a little shaky. Sonic went and had adventures in the world of the Arabian Nights and Arthurian Legend. I played both of these games when I was younger, and I remember the stories just kinda happening. Like, there were stakes and some nice production values in them, but I never remembered them beyond some cool spectacle. And I'm sorry, but I don't think any of the handheld games are in the running. The Advance series is more or less in line with the Genesis games as far as plot goes, and the Rush games are in line with the Advance games, just with double points. I actually remember Sonic Battle's story having something cool going for it, with Emerald's fight for autonomy, and it felt like having all the characters around actually had a purpose, because they each contributed to teaching Emerald something, and then by the end of it, it's a little tragic given how everything plays out. I think the story could have been something worth exploring if it wasn't on a handheld and stuck with the limitations of a GBA cartridge. Battle probably deserves its own video one day, honestly. Maybe later this year? But I don't think it's my favorite Sonic story. Alright, enough sidesteps, back to the big boy stuff. Sonic Unleashed, as this would be the first mainline game after
One!
Sonic Team really tried to fly this one a little closer to the ground. Not really in the scale of everything because, yeah, the planet gets split into chunks, but rather the tone of it all. The situation might be dire, but the attitude of our heroes never reaches the level of shonen anime as the adventure titles, while also never stooping as low as some future games will, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Sonic and company are determined to stop Eggman from using the power of Dark Gaia to take over the world, but Thankfully, that doesn't keep them from stopping to smell the roses. There are so many cute moments along the way here that makes you happy to just hold up and take everything in. Exploring all the cultures on display, all the people that have quirky and fun things to say to you, and hearing one of Jason Griffith's last performances as Sonic.
Pretty cool, huh?
While I still might like Ryan's Sonic just a hair more, I think Jason was a remarkably good choice for Sonic after that. The energy and fun he brought to this role is amazing. He just embodies that cocky hero spirit so well, and there are also barely any side characters to speak of. Tails is there for a little bit to help with gadgets and stuff. Amy's there to do her typical mistake this thing for Sonic shtick, which really wasn't getting old to them at this point. Really? Chip is there to be a guide of some sort, not to mention he has a pretty solid purpose in the narrative overall. Some may have found him annoying, but I never did when I was younger, and the Werehog is in a similar boat. When I was younger, I didn't mind the Werehog all that much, and I haven't really played Unleashed since my first playthrough, and while you might be thinking that signals bad news, it wasn't my fault. I'm pretty sure I had my copy stolen from me by one of my brother's old friends a long time ago. Thus, I was never given the opportunity to have my opinion of the Werehog soured. Going back through and playing it now, I realize it's honestly not that bad from a story perspective. It's just kind of there. Nothing annoyingly bad or unnecessarily praiseworthy about it in the grand scheme of things. Thus, when it gets taken away from him, it's more like a, oh dang, kind of moment. Plus, the presentation for this game is out of the freaking world. It's one of, if not the best looking 3D Sonic games to date. All of the Hedgehog engine's lighting and graphical effects make Sonic and everything else in this world so appealing to look at. And while the story is more on the basic side when you boil it down, I don't think that's to Unleashed detriment. This is a gorgeous looking story that doesn't ask for a lot, but has a whole lot of fun to give.
Well, this is new. Showing remorse, Eggman? If you played nice, I wouldn't have to break all your toys.
Okay, boys and girls, confession time. I have actually never played Colors. Thus, I'm conflicted, and double thus, I'm showing off modded Generations footage instead of real Colors gameplay. But from what I've seen and heard from others, the narrative in Colors is just kind of your typical Sonic vs. Eggman plot. The Wisps don't really add anything other than an unneeded motivation, and Sonic ultimately wins in the end. The jokes and writing are hit or miss from what I've seen in the cutscenes, and in general, the setup is nothing we haven't been through before. When Colors finally gets released on PC, I will make it my duty to come back and do a full review for the only mainline Sonic game I have yet to complete. But I don't think it would be taking home the gold even if I had.
Oh man, that was crazy!
Oh,
Sonic Generations does not have a very good story. It had the potential to be pretty good, but it did not have enough effort put into that department. The game sees Sonic and his friends getting sucked through time and space, which brings them to many different locations from their past games, eventually teaming up with Sonic and Tails from the past to take the fight to Dr. Eggman and Dr. Eggman of the past, and ultimately save the day. Who would have guessed? And classic Tails is probably the cutest thing I have ever seen.
you're doing great, Sonic. You mean you're doing great, Sonics?
You shut up! He said it right! For the 1,000,000th time, it's not anything we haven't seen before. Where it had the potential to excel is with the character interactions and callbacks. With Sonic going back through and rescuing all of his friends, this would have been the perfect time to have some cutscenes or dialogue describing what they just witnessed or recapping their relationship with Sonic at the very least. This could have added so much more to the rival battles and rematches with powerful enemies like Perfect Chaos. Something as small as a cutscene at the end of these encounters would have made them so much more satisfying to overcome. This is also the first time I remember hearing Shadow's new voice. I still turn away right before I hear him say this line.
You've got this, Sonic.
Ugh, just give him the gun back. He sounds like a snake that learned to overcome his lisp. It just feels like there wasn't enough thought put into the finer details of these cameos and interactions. And that also goes for Sonic and Tails interacting with their younger selves. There are some fun lines here or there, but not nearly enough as there should have been. The story never really feels like it gets a good footing because it's trying to move you along to all these nostalgic locations as fast as possible. And that's good for making sure we don't get bored, but I would have just liked a little more time with some of these guys. Oh well, at least the game is top-notch fun.
Hey Sonic! Enjoy your future! It's gonna be great!
Sonic Lost World is not a very good game. Sorry. Sonic Lost World is not a very good game, and also has a pretty weak story. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that terrible. It sees Sonic and Tails taking on Eggman above this odd place thingy called the Lost Hex. After adventuring on it for a while and realizing it was an excuse to give this game generic platformer locales that we've seen in every other mundane game in the genre, we run into Oingo Boingo, Stanky, Hanky Panky, and Zaz. Some of the most generic enemy designs you could possibly have come up with for a mundane platforming game. They bring nothing new to the table and are supposed to be threatening monsters, yet they demonstrate no unique powers of their own except the power to control robots? Which they use to eventually take control of Eggman's machines, which forces him into an uneasy alliance with Sonic and Tails. I can at least say that things of mild importance happen when levels finish. Eggman actually shows us how much he detests having control taken away from him, which is interesting. Tails gets captured and presumably turned into a robot, but that doesn't last more than 4 seconds, and the world is being sucked of any life, which is ultimately stopped before it has any chance to matter. The interactions between our main characters drive this story, for as much as that's worth. Some of Tails' dialogue in this game is laughably dramatic. He snaps at Sonic for the stupidest things with dialogue that not only feels like it was meant for an 11-year-old, but comes across like it was written by one too. And don't think Sonic is spared from groan-inducing lines either.
I'm supposed to be the fastest, but I was too slow to save my buddy.
So weird.
The Deadly Six, as they're called, just kinda go away after you beat them, never to be seen again, as anticlimactically gone as they came. You may have noticed that I haven't been using my own footage for the cutscenes. If I'm being completely honest with you guys, I own Sonic Lost World, but the thought of replaying it makes my eyes roll so hard that it wasn't worth it just for some pre-rendered cutscenes that are meant for children. Sonic Lost World is a middle-of-the-road video game and a below-average Sonic game, as well as housing a boring story that has no real identity of its own.
Okay, if it pleases the court, all those who think Eggman is a total bonehead raise their hands.
Sonic Mania is in the same boat as the Genesis titles as far as complexity is concerned, but there's just a little bit more. Sonic, or whoever you choose, is on the hunt for Eggman after he uses his newly discovered Phantom Ruby to warp between locations Sonic has been to before. There are some new elements like the hard-boiled heavies and the return of Metal Sonic, but nothing too crazy for a 2D title. Knuckles gets some extra stuff with the Master Emerald and the Heavy King, but it's short-lived. I don't think it should have been an engrossing narrative though, that would have just been a little unnecessary. After all the emeralds have been collected and Eggman's defeated, the Heavy King turns on Eggman. After a 3-way battle between Eggman, the King, and Super Sonic, the Phantom Ruby opens up a wormhole that Sonic gets sucked into, which leads us to our final story to discuss. I cannot tell you all how excited I was for Sonic Forces. I remember the announcements like they were yesterday. I was in my dorm in Ireland when it was announced, and I was in the middle of a final at culinary school when it was revealed that Chaos and Metal Sonic would be teaming up with all these other villains. Not you. My excitement could not be contained. This was the first time I had ever been excited about a narrative in a Sonic game. Ever. I got the game, and we all know the story from there. None of it was real, just an illusion from the Phantom Ruby to unnecessarily taint Mania's simplicity. I had honestly felt like I'd been played. I still feel like they purposefully used fan-favorite villains to get people excited for an experience that was never going to look anything like this. The way the narrative just nosedives after the first encounter with Infinite was so tragic. They had every opportunity to give us nostalgia-fueled rematches with these characters, but they let it all fizzle out. The enemy I was looking forward to the most was taken out in a cutscene. You cannot tell me there was any point to his being there besides safe advertisement for the promotional material. It's been speculated that there were higher plans for the villains due to the uncovering of different graphical effects that go unseen in the final game, like Chaos's liquid body in particular. I'll link this Twitter thread in the description because it's super interesting to speculate and see what talented fans have been able to do. Infinite as a character had a lot of potential, but is completely undercut by his own backstory. The reason he wants to destroy everything and become the most powerful being ever is because Shadow the Hedgehog beat him up? Are you serious? That is the best story they could do for a brand new villain? Could you imagine if everyone who got beat up by Shadow went on a murderous rampage?
Chaos control!
The few times you do meet Infinite, you're just waiting on him to say something that comes right out of anime villain dialogue for dummies, and then after that he goes on the offensive.
Your insistence is futile.
Whoa, 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 whoa!
Oh, Mickey Mouse! I wonder if he's got some adventures for us.
You could argue it gives him some degree of keeping your attention, but I think it makes him as generic as they come. And the whole defining gimmick of an Avatar character is terribly underplayed in the story, but I didn't expect much. And all the other side characters are a domino effect of that, not making for anything mildly interesting for these characters to bounce off of. All the dialogue is horribly stiff and feels so forced. No, this isn't a joke! They made a bad game and my YouTube review of it is very serious! It comes and goes with no real point to it all. And I would have loved to praise this story as a return to the over-the-top ridiculous storytelling of the adventure games. But this one didn't have the support of the people writing it, so how could I possibly give it mine? All I can say is that Forces is a rather uneventful and generic Sonic story. And that's it.
We need to fix the real world we all live in.
True that.
Alright, that's all I think I care to cover. I either don't care for any others or don't remember them, therefore doubt they'll be in the running for my number one. Now, going through all this together, I'm going to assume that you understand what I look for in my Sonic stories. So it should surprise none of you that my second runner-up is... Yeah, I'm totally biased here, but I really can't help myself. If you can watch the opening cinematic to this game and not get excited, then I'm totally envious of what it's like to not be a Sonic fan, but I can't do that. The constant run-ins with Chaos as he grows stronger and stronger is so great as a constant reminder of him as a threat. The multiple stories may have been a bit disjointed and some may be borderline on irrelevant, but I still liked getting different perspectives on the situation, especially Gamma's. And the climax is the most nostalgic moment in a video game for me, ever. Sonic Adventure is a very flawed and very bumpy road of a story, but I'm more than willing to ride over those bumps for one of my favorite games of all time. In second place, I might get some heat for this one, but I think it's gotta be... The setup is just so easy to love. It's Eggman versus the Sonic heroes, and up until the last moment, that's what you think. It's so close to the good old days, but with just a little more character interaction to flesh it all out. And then when you get to the end and the curtain is pulled up and you've been tricked this whole time by none other than one of the coolest villains in the franchise, it's crazy. The drawn-out nature of the stages for some teams makes the pace of the narrative a bit spread out, and that is a legitimate problem. And I think they could have gone without showing Metal twirling his mustache after some of the boss fights, and ruining the true mystery, but it was still such a solid and contained plot that had some loose ends to keep us guessing afterwards. And finally, my favorite Sonic story to revisit is... Oh yeah, I hope you all saw this one coming. Unleashed is such a solid little tale. For starters, it's such a beautiful video game, which to me contributes to the incredible tone it strikes. The visuals are that of a very well-made animated film, thus it has a very feel-good nature to it. I can't not be kinda happy when I'm watching Sonic interact with the citizens of these towns. And the story doesn't fall far from that tree either. All of the best animated movies are made for children with an adult audience also in mind. Of course, Sonic isn't a mature property, but I think that its story has a good balance of lighthearted fun with the exploration of all these cultures and places. But also, it's got its fair share of more serious moments, with the end of the world very much in the rearview mirror for the whole game and affecting some of the people you meet. And it all ramps up appropriately towards the end. It's not perfect, of course. We've seen that this is literally the case for all these game stories, and it's no exception for the best one. The Werehog isn't the most necessary thing to include, but it's also not the worst inclusion we've ever seen. Chip might be seen as annoying to some, while I ultimately like his character by the end. After Adabat, he finally remembers who he is and has this monologue thanking Sonic, but the camera pulls back into a first-person perspective, signifying that he's addressing the player directly, and this is nice. I find it to be a good payoff to the bit of mystery that Chip's presence had up until this point. And other than that, I think it's just a fun little contained story that has a grand climactic send-off. I can't think of a more airtight Sonic story when compared to Sonic Unleashed. Alright, that took a long ass time. I seriously did not expect this one to be so long, but hey, that's just what Sonic does to me, I guess, and God, that happens all the time. now that I think about it. If you care to civilly share your own hot takes for Sonic's best narrative, I implore you to summon me in the comments down below. And hey, happy season premiere, everybody! Season 4 marks a couple of changes for us here on Command Prompt, most notably our look. I want to thank some specific people real quick for making it all happen. Firstly, we have Manny Bardo for composing our new intro song. I love it so much, and it fits perfectly with the new look. Then we have the man Elliot, who you all should know as my helper slash writer slash consultant for the channel. He has made the spiffy new animation for the intro, my new look, and pretty much everything else you see around here that looks different. And last but certainly not least, my other channel artist slash helper slash best friend, Nick. He was alongside Elliot through the whole redesign process, and they did so extremely well with everything. I am so unbelievably happy with our new look this season. I am so excited to get to work on these videos. I came out of 2020 being almost burnt out, but in that short break I've had, I have come up with, no joke, 5 new video ideas, and they're all in the pipeline right now. And coming back to record this, I wrote this a couple of weeks ago, actually probably a month ago, and I have even more video ideas now. So things are about to go crazy for this channel. So thank you for being here. And but sorry, go back to the actual script. This was unscripted. This season is going to be chock full of banger videos, I promise. But I hope you all enjoyed the premiere, because the next one is about to go into full production very soon. And I hope I'll see you back here for that. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching. So thanks for stopping by, and have a great day.